How you guys doing? Chris Frigo, Powerlifting, and in today's video I want to discuss John the sit-ups and why trying to fix your anterior pelvic tilt may be hurting you more than it's helping you. Check it out. Alright, so for those of you who don't know what an anterior pelvic tilt is, also known as APT or lower cross syndrome, basically what it is exactly what it sounds like. It is the pelvis being anteriorly rotated to a too far extent, and this causes excess curvature in the lumbar spine, which can obviously cause low back issues and really fuck up your form on every one of your lifts. A couple of symptoms of this are usually tight hip flexors, weak glutes, hamstrings, and abdominals. Now, a lot of people, when they try and address this, later on in another video, I will address the hip flexibility issue. If it's really tight, I have a great stretch that can really help that. But for now, let's just assume that you've ruled out hip flexibility issue. Then the next place a lot of guys would turn to is weak glutes. Chances are, if you're sitting there and doing your squats and your deadlifts diligently, and you can actually get glute activation, you probably don't have weak glutes. At least not weak enough to cause severe APT. So lastly, a lot of guys turn to weak abdominals, and most likely that's probably the case with the large majority of people. That at least ones that don't work in offsetting. If you work in offsetting, it's probably tight hip flexors, but for intermediate, novice, even advanced lifters, it's most likely weak abdominals. And yes, guys, you do need to do direct work. So, so a lot of guys correctly address that is an abdominal issue, but they don't quite fix it appropriately. Because what they do, they just sit there and do sit-up after sit-up after sit-up after sit-up. And it makes sense. The main mover in when you're doing sit-ups, it's your abs. It's your TVA, it's your RA, it's your inner outer obliques. So, logically, you'd think that it would build your core. I'm going to show you why a lot of times that can just be wrong. Because if you have weak abdominals, when you sit there and do sit-ups, your hip flexors will take over, and I will demonstrate that later on. But what you want to do is you want to do what we call a John sit-up, and basically what it is a sit-up in which you are actively pulling and contracting your hamstrings against some kind of resistance, whether it be someone's hands pushing behind your Achilles tendon. Not your Achilles, above your Achilles tendon, please, above. Or, against a band, or even just pulling into the ground with your feet, with your heels off of the ground. Sorry, on the ground. What this does, through something called reciprocal inhibition, it will contract your hamstrings and really relax your hip flexors. And for those of you who don't just know what the term reciprocal inhibition means right off the bat, it's exactly what it sounds like, reciprocal. So it means the opposite, like the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2 over 1, 1/3 is 3 over 1. So it's reciprocal, it's the opposite of the hamstring, which would be the quads, and then inhibition, which means it inhibits it. So when you contract your hamstrings, your quads contract. When I sit here and contract my bicep, my tricep has to relax. I'll contract my tricep, my bicep relax. So what you're going to want to do is basically pull against resistance. And if you do it correctly, you'll contract your hamstrings and completely take your hip flexors out of the equation so that they don't take over. This will actually isolate your abs, and it'll make it so you're actually fixing the problem rather than just working your hip flexors more than your core and making the problem worse. So I'm actually just going to show you what it is really quick, and it's a pretty simple exercise, and yeah, try it out. Alright guys, so first here's a regular sit. If you see, my feet are really hunched in close. I'm not really driving into the ground. I'm using a lot of hip flexors. There's a lot of bend to the neck. It's just not very good. A lot of people would think that would look correct, but what I was talking about, you're not pushing your heels on the ground, you're not getting that reciprocal inhibition, so you're just making the problem worse because you're recruiting your hip flexors a lot. in this second video, you'll see the massive difference doing a John to sit makes. You see, I set my feet up really far back, they're flat on the ground, I'm really driving my heels in. You can tell because you can tell that my hamstrings and my calves both contract really hard. You know, my pelvis is posteriorly rotated, which is very, very important for this exercise, and I can barely do one rep. It does make a really big difference, and it's really isolating the, you see I got my foot caught in the noose. You don't want to do that, guys. Alright, I kind of cut my narration short in that last video, but I mean, you should get the gist of it. It basically helps you isolate your abs and relax your hip flexors, and you know, instead of making the problem worse, it will aid it. Yeah, I mean, check out more of my videos, and please like and subscribe and share. Thanks.